Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Johnny.
Today, we're going to talk about movies.
Horror movies, to be exact.
Because this is Gutted, and that's what we do. Dawn of the Dead. Remake, not the original. If you're screaming blasphemy, give me a chance. Dawn of the Dead was a movie that came out in 2004, and it was a remake, and it was a revamped version to fit the style and the times of the early 2000s and horror coming out in that time. Now, zombie movies up until this point, they were B movies, B horror movies. They were slow, they weren't really exciting anymore, they didn't have any shock value. And in the early 2000s, we had a selection of movies to come out that just changed the game, how we were going to absorb zombie content. The thing that struck me so hard about this was that it nailed the sense of chaos, anarchy, destruction, panic. In fact, this movie took less than 5 minutes to show you its first zombie. It's a little girl, she's got her missing lips, right? She's standing in the hallway. Anna's husband wakes up in the morning after their date night, and he's like, oh, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And he goes over to her, he's like, oh my God. And he turns away for a second. She just reaches out and bites a piece of his neck, and he does a slow motion fall, and he's bleeding all over himself. She goes to call 911. And she must have been on the phone for maybe 10 seconds. He's up walking around already. He just lurches at her, and it's just, now we're in the movie. We're rolling, it's quick, it's fast. She makes it out of the house. The whole neighborhood is just torn to shit. There's smoke going, there's fires burning. The whole neighborhood has lost its fucking mind in the span of a few minutes that zombies have made it onto the screen. So she's driving, she's taking off. There's this really great helicopter shot. It gave me anxiety when I was watching it in the theater because the screen is so huge and I was in just the perfect position in front of the screen. And you see her driving, you see this other van is just driving along the street, and then you've got this side street, and another car T-bones the other car spins off, hits a gas station, explodes. And she never slows down. Well, eventually they make it to the mall. That's what this movie is all centered on, is the mall. And what is the mall called? Crossroads. Crossroads Mall. I can't decide if that's cheesy and lazy thinking or clever. The thing about this film that I really enjoyed, of course, are the zombies. The makeup was taken to a whole nother level. Now, I watched the behind the scenes on the makeup team and how they came up with what they were gonna do. And the zombies all have stages. In the beginning, everybody's fresh. The middle stage where there was decomposition, and then you had towards the end where they were almost unrecognizable as people. And in the behind the scenes, the lead on the makeup team, he said that they studied pictures and had photographs up of bodies in different stages of decomposition. They took extra care on this. It wasn't that they, slapped some gore on and put some prosthetics on and just let it go. They took the time to really think about decomposition, the human body, months, weeks, heat, injuries, things like that, which I thought was really, really cool and scary, really fucking scary. Tom Savini shows up randomly in the movie, and he has to. He's fucking Tom Savini, man. If you don't know who he is, stop what you're doing, Google him, come back. He's on the news. He plays some sheriff character. He's like, you gotta shoot him in the head. You gotta, that'll put him right down. And that's how you get the clue. Everybody gets the clue. We're gonna shoot zombies in the head, and that's the kind of zombies we're dealing with. And one of my favorite clips that shows off makeup, shows off the strength of characters, really brought to the table some of the new things that they were doing with zombies. It's when they bring in the new group of survivors into the mall, and it's this crazy ass moment right here.
Anna, come here.
Anyone know her name?
Died without a name? Damn.
Guys, do you want to move into the other room?
Holy shit!
Dude, Anna's such a badass. So a couple of different things about that clip was we saw the strength of Anna, our female character, and the makeup. That's actually a man in a suit. They put him in a bodysuit and then did all the extra makeup work. But you could see like how in detail the makeup, this texture of the skin, the web of veins across the face. Like, you as an audience person, you're never gonna look at somebody like that in real life. I don't care how nice of a person you are now, today. If that was you in that moment, you would look at her and go, oh, roll her outside. If she wakes up and she's great, we'll give her a bottle of water and we'll welcome her back. But that bitch is dead. Something that freaked me out quite a bit. When somebody turns into a zombie, you just kind of assume that they just lose all memory of themselves. Andy is the gun shop owner who lives, is living in his building, which is across the street. They're trying to send him some food. He gets bit and he dies, but they see him go to the roof. And he's always on the roof and he's always writing these signs and holding them up to show people, his message, like, what game are we playing, or, what's the news, or whatever conversation. And they see an image of him on the roof, they just see his back, and he's furiously working, like he's writing something really fast. And they're like, what is he doing? What is he doing? And when he holds the sign up, it's just blood smears all across the whiteboard. And he's holding it up in this memory of, this is what he used to do. This was his connection. This was part of his humanity. And he's remembering that. Sort of was very touching, a little sad, and kind of very terrifying, both between the morbid and the fact that he's trying to remember his humanity and it's completely gone. In this movie, you have these characters who have this perfect setup of safety and sanctuary. They're in the mall, they have all these different department stores where they can get everything that they need, and all kinds of things to keep them entertained, and they have fucking power. They have electricity, like, what more do you need? And then a bunch of geniuses sit around and go, I don't want to die here. Let's leave, guys. What are you talking about? You're gonna go out into the middle of nowhere where there's not any of this. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'd be really concerned about showers in the apocalypse. Bathrooms. Anybody with reason loses this argument and they're like, yeah, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna find our future and we're gonna go out to the lakes and find an island and live happily ever after. So they build this tank out of these shuttle buses that they have. They rig it up, they put barbed wire around the top, they reinforce it. They eventually get to the point where they leave, and when they're driving out, they're driving really fucking fast. Like, these are top-heavy buses. Nobody's got seatbelts on. We ripped all those out. And you're just screeching around corners, and you're hitting cars. I mean, maybe that was the logic. If there's cars blocking our way, we could plow right through them. Still think it's a little unnecessary to drive as fast as they were driving. And to prove my point, I'm gonna show you a clip of what happens when you drive too fast in these barricaded shuttle buses from the super mall that you come from.
There's still one hanging on.
Which fucking side?
Right side.
I got him.
You gotta drive faster, man.
Hard left, here. Seriously. Who starts up a chainsaw when you're just rocking around the bus and there's nothing to hold on to? There's no security. Don't start up a chainsaw. Dawn of the Dead, the remake, 2004, really brought to the table a different perspective on telling the zombie story when all we had were the slow-moving, cheesy, over-the-top, gory, with no storyline type of movies, and along with a couple of other films that were coming out during that time, gave us something fresh, gave us something to be excited about. It also gave us sort of parkour zombies. They were jumping, they were frantic, they were doing everything they could to get to you, and that brought new fear and new excitement. And those are the kinds of things that we're always looking for with horror movies. That's the kind of things that we want. The original's still very good. It's a very great film, and you should check that one out too if you've only seen one and not the other. See them both.
So before I begin, I want to talk about zombie films in general. I've heard things from people that they think there's too many of them, they're getting sick of them. For me, it's the opposite. For me, it's unlimited creativity in the filmmaking sense. So I'm gonna keep watching them if they keep making them. And with that, I'm gonna talk about 28 Days Later from 2003. But what I really like about zombie films is that the directors and the creators and the writers can come up with really interesting ways of how the infection or whatever it is comes to be. In this case, it's the rage. And the opening scene is these three people going into a laboratory. There's kind of like these crusaders, I guess, who are trying to free monkeys, and they have this rage. And they see this scientist there who says, "What are you guys doing? Why does the infection take place to begin with?" It's always because of some stupid fucking human that has to mess it up, right? When I first saw this film, I was kind of screaming at the screen. I do that occasionally when I'm watching a movie by myself. I'm like, no. The character opens up the cage with the monkey, and of course it jumps on her, and there we go. 28 days later, we see what the product of that mistake was. There's many iconic scenes in this movie. The one that really stands out, people remember too, is the opening scene. And it's a man who wakes up in a hospital and there's complete isolation. Now he's asking if there's anyone out there, and there isn't. The music really sticks out in the opening scene because it's kind of this build-up as this character is discovering that the city of London has just been completely obliterated. There's no one around, there's cars tipped over, there's all these wide shots that show him like there is no one around, and you're like, what the hell is going on here? What happened here? You get kind of an idea because of that opening scene, but you don't know why there's no one there. So eventually he makes his way to this church, and I call this hello number one. As soon as he goes inside, he says hello, and this part, no matter how many times I watch it, makes me jump.
Hello?
So as you see there, these two zombies spring up and just stare at him. And I don't know, just the imagery of that and the pace of that, how they cut to that, just really gives me chills every time I see it. It's really creepy. This priest approaches him and he's very manic and making weird noises. So I'm like, okay, they're doing a good job in terms of directing these people to act like zombies. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time before shit hits the fan. We have the main character running away from the church. These people show up and start throwing Molotov cocktails and helping him escape because the zombies, they're fast. They're running super fast. At this point, he meets up with them. They kind of explain what's going on. They give you the sense that there's really no hope out there. They're telling him even that his family's probably dead, so it really brings the tone of the movie down a little bit. Then they walk to Jim's house. Jim, you discover is his name, the main character, the man we've been following, and Mark and Selena meet up with him, and they form this sort of group. Now, I wasn't really emotionally invested in the characters at this point until Jim gets into his house. And he walks into his parents' room, and his parents are on the bed, and they're deceased. They're gone. And it's not too often that I kind of get waterworks, especially in this type of movie, but there was something about that scene, how it was directed, and him even reading a note from his parents, hoping that he would read that someday. And it was really emotional and sad. At this point in the movie, too, I noticed that the acting in general, right, all the talent in the movie is top-notch. They've really tapped into the emotions of what people would be like in a situation like this. And I'm glad that was something that was not lost as the movie went on. So like any good horror film and zombie film, there's a flow, there's story arcs and different things that trigger action. As Jim is recalling memories of his family and his parents, the director wants to remind you that there's people with rage out there running amok. So of course, the next thing you see, the zombies just breaking through the house. And you really get a different side of the characters here too, because after they get rid of some of the infected and all is safe, Mark seems to have a bite on him or something. Selena wastes no time to just start hacking away at him and killing him. That again was like putting it into like the next gear for the movie for me. And it just kind of kept me glued to the screen at that point. Anyone who's kind of squeamish, that's probably the point where they would maybe break away from it and not watch anymore. So that's how intense it was. Another thing I'd like to sort of applaud the filmmakers here is that the time frame in which infection has taken place in the movie. It's kind of in the middle phase of what's going on. The challenge for the filmmakers there is how do we create an environment, a scene where there's already been damage done. You're seeing as the characters are going through the city, cars turned over, there's blood, there's bodies, there's already barricades built from people that have survived. And it's exactly how I would imagine a post-apocalyptic zombie outbreak setting would be. So I think they nailed it there. That is especially apparent when they find that there's a survivor on a building flashing Christmas lights. This is actually around Christmas time. Oh, what a time for this to happen, right? Selena and Jim run up the building to meet up with the people. So As they meet these new characters, Frank and Hannah, Frank is a father of Hannah. They seek refuge inside of their apartment, and they kind of explain what they've been going through. And what I really like about these scenes is that they're not drawn out scenes of dialogue. Even Jim and Selena at this point just kind of have a back and forth about their current mindset. And then you eventually will transfer over to conversations with Hannah and Frank and what they think the next step should be. I think a lot of zombie films fall into this idea that we have to explain everything with dialogue. But in this case, it's very quick. We just see visual, we get it, we know what's going on, we go to the next thing. So what ends up happening is they do leave the building and they leave in a car to go to this soldier base that they hear a radio transmission from. The movie isn't all depressing, sad, blood, guts constantly. I think the filmmakers realize they have to dial it back a little bit just to give some balance. So in this case, there's a part where they go into a tunnel and Jim's just saying, this is a terrible idea. We're going into a tunnel in this situation and you're gonna drive into it. And he's kind of just chewing out Frank, but they start going over this rubble and things and they actually start laughing, and it's something unusual you wouldn't expect people to do, but seeing that, it added a little bit more character to these people you're seeing on screen. It kind of makes them a little bit more human, I guess, if you will, in a situation that's very bizarre for anyone to be in. Another charming part that's kind of random, but I enjoy it, is they go to this grocery store and they're just kind of browsing the aisles, laughing, picking out their favorite foods, things that don't expire, because at this point, clearly time has passed. Some of the produce is rotted and they can't pick up certain things. So it brings that human element again back to the characters, and they're not all that different after all. They eventually get to this point where they need gas, and Jim takes it upon himself to explore this building alone. And as I mentioned before, there was a hello moment number 1. This is hello moment number 2.
Hello?
He seems to have an inkling that there's something wrong about it. And very quietly, infected child drops and chases after him. And he kind of sensed it, so he turns around and hits the child. And it's a very interesting concept, because when you think of zombie films, no one's safe, right? And I feel like a lot of filmmakers are a little bit, they don't want to go there. They don't want to go to, we don't want to show children that are zombies. That was new for me, and it was pretty shocking to me. It was a quick scene though. They didn't dwell too much on it, and it just really shows how terrible the situation they're in. I'm not going to go too much into the ending, but they do end up making it to the army base, and there's actually soldiers there. And if you could imagine in a zombie situation, it might be safe, it might not. If you've seen it, you know what goes down. If you haven't, I highly recommend you watch that. In terms of the way they've accomplished the film, I like the style of the camera. It had a very home video, circa 2000 feel to it. Brings you into sort of that time frame, but also gives a really grittiness to it, and I liked that. The quality wasn't focused on graphics and special effects. The quality was focused on the storytelling aspect. Another thing I noticed is the classic shot that's known as the Dutch tilt. That happens a lot in the film. It gives you a sense of like uneasy. It's like you're looking at the frame and it's tilted to the side. It just kind of throws things off a little bit. It's not a natural thing we do. Another thing that I noticed that didn't happen quite as often is they used reflections really creatively. For example, a character may be talking and you see the reflection of the other character off of a piece of glass on the ground, and that person's actually the one speaking. So the focus is on someone else as the other person's talking. There's even a moment where there's two shots sort of interspliced together at the same time, and it shows a location and it sort of tilts up and shows the next scene. Kind of broke up the standard cut. So overall, I think this is a great zombie film. They don't call them zombies in the movie. They're known as infected and have rage. I hate watching a movie like this and kind of being detached from the story in a moment where a character makes a really stupid decision. The only time that really happened was at the beginning when everyone gets infected. It actually seemed very real in the sense that real decisions that people would make in that situation, people that are troubled, people that have different pasts coming together. It really shows how far the humans can be stretched in a survival situation, I think. And that's another part of why I like zombie films so much, is because people will do crazy things in a situation where there's no hope, or there at least seems to be no hope. And I'll let you be the judge on how you think they display that. If you've seen it before, you may agree with me that I think they do a good job, but if not, I want you to check it out if you haven't.
Return of the Living Dead, 1985, one of the classics. I feel like is a total classic for the zombie genre. You haven't actually seen this before.
No, I haven't. I saw the movie. I think it's really in my top 5 zombie films, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, it's got to be. I'm not sure where it's at in there, but it's definitely in there.
That's awesome because it's also in my top 5. I grew up watching this movie and it scared the shit out of me every single time I watched it. Like, where on earth were, at the time, were you going to see zombie movies where the zombies were sprinting and running and speaking and planning and conscious and able?
Right. That's what's took me back too, because I thought that was more of a new concept for zombies, like new films have done, but I didn't realize this happened in that movie. And another thing that this movie really delved into that I was kind of taken back, but also like, oh my gosh, it's really terrible. But the whole reason why the zombies are moaning and chasing the living is because they want to eat their brains, because it takes away their pain of death. They're feeling the pain of death.
That's such a great intro into this whole movie. So if you've never seen this movie, like, you have to do it. Like, even if you're just gonna pause this right now, go watch it and then come back, like, please do. It is the cornerstone of, like, the foundation of all great zombie films that have ever been made. And one of the reasons is, just a little bit of history, was that John Russo, the creator of this film, he actually branched out from Night of the Living Dead because he was the other creator. It was him and Romero that created Night of the Living Dead, and they had a dispute about how to handle the sequels. And so in that dispute, they couldn't come to an agreement, and so they split off and created their own sequels to the film. And so Romero was, all his sequels would be deemed the Dead movies. So you had Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, and then Russo got to create his Living Dead. So any of his movies were referred to as the Living Dead. Because if you watch the movie, he makes so many references to the Night of the Living Dead, and I'm like, how the hell is he doing that with copyright issues?
Exactly. Saying that, have you ever seen the movie The Night of the Living Dead? They say that
specific.
in the movie, and he's like, that is a true story, but he had to change the facts around because he would have been, something with the government or something, right?
Right. And did you catch the beginning of the movie where it was like this big title card and it said, everything in this is true?
Oh,
everything is exactly true.
That was hilarious.
You know, this movie, for me, was just kind of a split between, I don't know how much of it is satire, comedy, and genuine horror, and a reference to pop culture of the time. Because, like, as soon as you come away from a title card like that, like, it's a widescreen and it's of the medical supply store where everything takes place. And the title for the store, the name of the store is You Need a Medical Supply. You need a medical supply.
You know, I thought that was a really neat thing too. Speaking of the culture of the time too, in the 80s, I mean, these group of teenagers who are like these punk kids hanging out, causing a ruckus, breaking things. Coming from the 70s into this era, it's like very, that idea of the punk rockers coming out.
Yeah.
They're wearing leather, they have piercings, tattoos.
Chains, And it was reflected in the soundtrack too.
Yeah, it was very punk, right?
Very punk, rockabilly, like it was reflecting of that particular culture. But I really want to spend some time talking about the characters because, I mean, they're just so unique.
Yeah, so what are some of the characters you found?
Dude, I love Trash.
Trash.
Trash is exactly her name. She's so awfully trashy.
Yes.
They go and they do the party in the graveyard because that's what teenagers do. And she just starts this really bizarre conversation of, do you ever fantasize about dying? What?
And the guy was like, no, I don't try not to think about dying, but
ever.
Okay, yeah. And she's
talking
almost feeling like, she seems like she's getting really kind of like heated about it. She really like is getting turned on by talking about it, and like, what the heck?
Yeah, and then she just breaks out into dance. Like, she doesn't just break out into dance, she breaks out into a strip dance in the middle of the cemetery. And then the guys start dancing around with flares. Like, where did they get
Where's
the flares?
this coming from?
As the audience, I feel very confused at this point.
Yes.
Is this for the teenage boy? Like, is this movie for the teenage
Who's
boy?
the target audience here, if any? Although, speaking of that, though, I feel like when I see a movie like this or a zombie film, I kind of try to see what the filmmakers are trying to do. Are they going the total campy route and just stick into that? Or are they trying to balance it with some serious aspects of it that are kind of like, whoa, that's a little jarring? And I felt like this whole movie had a good balance of that, I guess, because there were some moments where I was like, wow, this is pretty intense. For example, the zombies transforming. We see one of the main characters going through the transformation phase from beginning, I guess, till end. And I've seen zombie films before where You know, it's very quick. They get bitten and,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a zombie. But this was like an ongoing process. It was very gruesome and grueling for the characters, and they stayed on that. And that kind of made me like a little cringy.
You know what? You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. I haven't actually thought about it, but there's like showing them and their progression and how much pain they're in, and they're always kind of screaming in pain.
Yes.
Every single time somebody touches them, moves them.
Practical effects, too, I thought were really good. The
You know what?
zombie.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
zombies, right? Favorite zombie is, I guess you call it the slime zombie. I kind of refer to
do.
it as a tar zombie, but the one in the basement that Tina encounters.
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
is the ground zero zombie, and we have to sort of toss to this clip because it's the perfect embodiment of the craziness of this film tied into some of the amazing practical effects. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at this really kick-ass clip.
Who's there?
Why does he know how to use the chain, hook it to the door, and then crank it open? Like, why are you so smart? That's not fair.
No,
you can
no.
run, and now you can think at things through and problem solve?
And
That's not
speak.
cool. And speak.
Yeah.
Oh, at the end of the clip, oh, brains. Like, you're an asshole. One of the two favorite things that I really love about the zombies when they attack at the mortuary is when the paramedics show up and when the cops show up. And each time there's a zombie that crawls into the cab of the vehicle, pulls out the little walkie-talkie, and is like,
Send more paramedics.
no, you don't get to do that.
Too intelligent, right, for zombies.
The other thing that really bothers me, not anything to do with like storytelling or anything like that, it bothers me that I really hope that if zombies ever happen, that this is not one of the possibilities of how zombies would happen. And it's the fact that you have to absolutely obliterate the entire body. You can't shoot
Right.
them in the head. That doesn't work. And they say that in the movie.
They say that, and that was a really scary aspect of these zombies is that, yeah, they even if they're, you know, you cut off their arms, their legs, their head, they're still undead. They're still moving, and they still
Yeah.
want to eat brains, I guess.
Like the dude takes a pickaxe and he hits the first zombie that we see, the cadaver that comes alive, just gets him right through the skull, and the guy still gets up and is, you know, wants to move around and chase him down, and they have to chop his body up, and then they put him in the crematorium. They obliterate his body into ashes, but it's not over because all the fumes, all the chemicals in his body go up into the sky. It starts to rain, and the rain pushes it back down into the ground, which wakes up all of the zombies. And it's like
Right.
this entirely vicious cycle.
It's a terrible shitstorm of events that happen for these
Yes.
people.
So that's something that we really don't explore in a lot of zombie films that was making this super unique and original. Out of all the zombie movies that could be created, even now to this day, every film that you ever watch, zombies, you shoot them in the head, they go down. These zombies don't. You have to completely burn them into nothing.
Right.
So how do you deal with that? Like, we don't see very many stories that are kind of pushing that side of the zombie genre. But I really thought that was a unique aspect to the
Definitely.
film.
I really had a lot of fun with this movie. I'm going to watch it again really soon, I think, and show some of my friends who I know are horror film fans but haven't seen it yet. And I think we're just going to like get together one night and just have a good time with it because it's that kind of movie.
Oh yeah, definitely. I watch it pretty regularly throughout, like every year at least watch it once or twice. But we highly recommend this one to you guys. And you know what? That actually wraps up our entire review of Return of the Living Dead. I hope you guys enjoyed it and enjoyed all the reviews that we did today. So if there's anything that you think that we should be watching or need to look at again and review it, you know, just send it to us at guttedreviews@gmail.com and you might just see it on a future episode.
Brains.